Hey everyone, welcome back to another lesson. So let's go ahead and actually continue talking about object-oriented programming. And, I want to talk a little bit about how we can actually use object-oriented programming because, you want to understand what is an object-oriented program first before we actually get into that. So, we talked a little bit about, examples of object-oriented programming, but I want to kind of expand on it a little bit here. All right. So one of the things I want to mention before we even start is that remember, object-oriented programming is essentially the type of programming that is designed to replicate an element in real life. All right. So that's why they call it object-oriented programming because there is really nothing special about object-oriented programming besides just the few things that you gotta learn, few keywords that you gotta learn when it comes to Python. But the reason they call it object-oriented programming is because, again, it's designed to replicate something in real life. That's why I've been using, real-life examples like the restaurant example that we used. That's why, because of that, because, again, it's designed to be something, to replicate something in real life. Now, to go back to that, restaurant example that we used, I want to use that to expand on, expand your knowledge on the object-oriented programming. So, if you remember that restaurant, we have a few different things in the restaurant, right? So we got a waiter, we got a chef, we got a cleaner, we got a manager to manage everybody. So just few people that you would find in a restaurant, right? Assuming, again, with that restaurant, you want to not do everything by yourself. You don't want to be the waiter, chef, cleaner, manager, all that stuff, right? So, in this case, we got a few people. And if you think about it, these are each one of these people are the elements of the restaurant, right? These are the people who make the restaurant a reality, right? So these are the objects of the restaurant. All right. So with that being said, I want to grab the waiter and I want to actually open this up because, again, let's say we want to create a virtual restaurant program, right? So if you want to go with the model, the object-oriented programming model, what we're going to do is we're going to create a portion of our code is going to be the waiter, right? So it's going to do everything that waiter does and has, right? A portion of our code is going to be whatever chef does and has. For example, a chef has food, and it does mix food together, right? Or we're going to actually, let's say we can make the cleaner. Again, a cleaner has tools, right? Cleaning tools, and it cleans the floor, for example, whatever, right? So that's basically all these things, all these things that people do and have. That's very, very important. Again, so if you think about it, all these elements have two, properties. What do they do? And what they have, right? So just keep that in mind. That's very important. So with that being said, let's actually grab the waiter here and let's actually open this up. So our waiter has something and does something. So our waiter is holding a plate. So this is a variable, right? Again, very simple thing. It's a variable, and the variable is holding plate equals true. It's a Boolean variable, right? So very simple. So this is basically what our waiter has. So it's holding a plate, and another value that it has is the tables that they're responsible for. So 4, 5, 6, for example, in this case. So this is what they have, or it has, right? And what it does is essentially it takes the orders from the table and, all that stuff from the table and order, and it takes the order to the chef. And also another function that it has is takes payment, right? Based on the amount. So that's the input in that function. So if you think about it, what it has essentially is just a bunch of values, right? Like variables with data. And what it does is just a bunch of functions, because, again, when you do something, you're performing a function, right? So that's basically what it is when you think about an object-oriented program. Because, and the way you actually name these, because I want to talk about the programming term of this, because moving forward, we're going to be mentioning it this way. What it has is an attribute, Okay, so attribute essentially is, variables associated with an object, in this case, the waiter. So in this case, our waiter is holding a plate and it has some tables that they're responsible for. So these are the attributes of this waiter, right? And the methods of this waiter, what it does is, these functions. Essentially, the method is function associated with an object, basically what this object can do, right? So again, an object, which is in this case is the waiter, right, has attributes and methods. An attribute is essentially this, associated variables, and a method is essentially this, functions or what it does. Now keep that in mind, guys. You can download this PDF in the resource section. So, if you want to take a look at it. I know this can be a little bit, kind of confusing, or sometimes it takes a while to get used to these wordings. But anyways, just think about it that way. When you think about an object in object-oriented programming, it has something, which is attributes, or like, imagine your attributes as a person would be your hair color, your, whatever that you associate with yourself, the shirt, the color of the shirt you're wearing, right? Or like how tall you are, or something like that. So that would be your attributes, right? In this case, in object-oriented programming, attributes of this, object is, are they holding a plate? Are the tables they're responsible for? So that's just like, stuff that the values that are associated with you or that object. And, a method, again, is just the functions or what you do as a person, or what this waiter is going to do in the restaurant, right? They're going to take order, then take it to the chef. They're going to take payments, right? So again, that's just the wording that we're going to be using moving forward. Attributes and methods, just keep that in mind. And another thing that you want to remember is that, again, an object is just a way to combine a piece of data and functionality, all right? And that way, again, we can create modular programs. When you talk about object-oriented programming, that's really what it is. You combine a piece of data and functionality, and you create a piece of like software that can be used in different places, all right? And one of the things you want to remember is that you can generate multiple objects in a program, okay? And essentially, this is like having multiple waiters in a restaurant. So think about it. If you go back here, so let's say your restaurant is bigger, right? It gets bigger, you got more clients, you got more people coming in and eat. So that's awesome, right? So you need to get more waiters. So that's when you have multiple waiters, and that's in a program you can have multiple objects from the same class. So to explain this is basically what your program is going to look like, all right, when you are doing object-oriented programming. So you have a class and you got an object, all right? So a class is essentially the overall category. In this case, in the class of this, one of the classes of this restaurant would be the waiter, right? So if you go all the way back, so we got waiter class, we got the chef class, we got the cleaner class, and we got the manager class. So these are all classes, right? And from these classes, we can generate multiple objects or unlimited amount of objects, essentially. So in this case, in my restaurant, in my imaginary restaurant, I got a waiter named Scarlett. I got a waiter named Kevin. So again, we have multiple objects. And these objects, if you remember, they have attributes and they got methods by themselves. So that's basically how it works. You got a class, which you can imagine a class as a blueprint. Essentially, like the entire program is essentially in that class, and this class can generate objects, and these objects can do different things and hold different values. That is pretty much it. This is object-oriented programming. Guys, again, if this is confusing to you, I strongly recommend watching this video a couple of times, and also let me know if you have any questions, all right? Because this is really, really important for you to understand, because I want you to understand the classes and objects. I want you to understand what is, attributes and methods, and what do they do, how do they work, and all that stuff before you move on to the next one. Because, we're going to get into the coding of this, and I'm going to explain how do you actually code this stuff. So it's really important to understand these things. So remember, you have objects inside an object-oriented, program, right? And each of these objects are called classes, and these classes, generate objects. So I hope that makes sense, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Download the PDF in the resource section so you can take a look at it. and I'll see you in the next lesson.